So, with the new expansion coming out soon, some people have been asking me how I build the decks that I build, and to that I reply mostly I net deck. So, before you all leave, just quick little thing, that's when I try to climb. However, at the beginning of each expansion, I spend the first month trying out new decks and seeing how they go. In fact, I tried out Odd Warrior the very first day of the expansion for Boomsday, and was like, this is gonna be a good deck type. Actually, no, Witchwood. I'm sorry. Odd was Witchwood. And I was like, this is going to be a good deck. It has a ton of armor, a ton of control. And although I never played it, it did end up becoming the deck that annoys me the most of any other deck in the game. So I already knew that that was going to be good. And it's all because I have like certain things that I'm thinking about as I'm going throughout making a deck. And I'm going to basically share those tips with you because I'm sure that with the new expansion coming out, you guys are going to want to experiment. And you're not necessarily going to win a net deck as much, although I would recommend net decking. And I'll get into that at the end, what you can do with net decking if you want to climb. But just in general, like building a deck, there are a couple of things that you're going to want to do. So first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that your deck has synergy. So I'm not going to go into specific synergies like Harik the Bat and potential Zoolock, maybe, or something like that. I'm going to go into like what you should generally be thinking about when making synergies. The first thing is that you don't necessarily want your deck to be based on one synergy. Like, you don't want the win condition, and I'll get into that in a second, to be one synergy or combo, unless you have so much card draw or ramp that you'll get it reliably and win games. Druid. Sorry, if you couldn't hear me, I said, like, Druid, because Druid's a ridiculous class right now and can actually do that reliably and have a ton of different combos that can win game, whether it be Malagos or Mechathune potentially or anything. That being said, what you want to aim for is a ton of little synergies, not too many, because obviously if you have too many, your deck will be like tons of different pieces trying to work together poorly. But I'm talking like in Zoolock, it has a couple of synergies, being the heal to get out the get out a free Happy Ghoul, and you'll reliably get the heal off because you do damage to yourself with your hero power. Your hero power allows for consistent card draw in an aggro deck, which isn't necessarily seen in a lot of aggro decks. The fact that you have the Soul Infusion, the +2/+2 to the leftmost minion, and you have minions that double themselves as their battle cry, so you get little things like that, and just little synergies like that that just help the deck function as a whole. To use examples from the new set that's coming out, Rakistan's Rumble. Looking forward to that. Super hyped, by the way. If you are all super hyped about that, please tell me and what you're most hyped about. But anyway, something like the Reign of Toads. Now, I don't think that this card's going to be good, but it could potentially synergize in a even Shaman deck. Because you play it on turn 6, Overload 3 still leaves you with 4 mana, so you can play a 4-drop on turn 7, although that is slower. You did get 3 2/4 Toads out with Taunt, so like that's a potential synergy you could base your thing around. I don't know, Timeout in a control deck that synergizes just well with a control paladin deck. As I already said, the Harik the Bat could potentially synergize with the Warlock. Although then again, it is a bit slow for Zoolock, so that's definitely going to be something that you're going to want to watch out for. Spirit of the Bat. Stealth, give friendly minion dies, give a minion in your hand +1/+1. That actually has a lot of synergy for the same reason Soul Infusion does. And just a ton of stuff like that. Or Cannon Barrage, which is basically like just have a ton of pirates and this card will pop off. Just the point is you want to try to look for a ton of synergies that will help your deck function as a whole and be fluid. That's the main goal of the deck. Yes, sure, ramp is important. Well, not ramp. Tempo is important in having a good curve, but making sure all of the cards work well together and synergize is another important thing. The next thing is a win condition. You want to have a win condition in your deck, whether it be a single card or just constantly being able to pump out cards. Like a combo deck being a combo, obviously, but Zoolock, which is going to be my example probably for most aggro decks, being the fact that its win condition is you can just continually pump out things with your endless card draw. And the fact that you can heal yourself up a little bit, so the card draw actually doesn't hurt you as much as it could. Let's see here, what other things could, like Paladin, Odd Paladin, that has some good win conditions, being the level up, or if you get Tauren with the Stonehill Defender. Let's see, what else? Hunter has Rexar and the Spellstone in order to help them out a little bit. And basically, you've already seen all of the win conditions for all these things. If you've actually played in competitive a little bit, you know that most decks have a win condition, whether it be just the onslaught of minions or a surprise or like a mid-range power spike to try to get the game out of control, or even an odd rogue, just having a 2/2 weapon that can constantly kill off the enemy minions and keep board control for you, or go face if you need to. Just things like that. Like, you need win conditions to win games. If you just have a ton of little synergies that like help you out and get you a little bit ahead but no real win condition, then you're probably not actually going to have a super successful deck. Although obviously, if it does have enough synergy to the point where you can just get ahead enough to where they can't like regain board control, that in itself is a win condition. It's kind of like, that's basically what Zoolock is. So what you want to do is you want to have synergies that build up to a win condition. And you don't want your win condition to be just like a singular thing. Like, obviously, for some decks, like with a ton of ramp or draw, like I've already said, maybe Priest or Druid, going for Mechathune with card draw and tons of control options. But even then, like, you have ways of getting to that win condition. You have to have ways of getting to it. However, if you're like, I'll probably draw this legendary card that'll help me pop off at some point in the game, that's a terrible way. That's a terrible way to build a deck. Obviously, it's fun if you get it sometimes, but just in general, I don't think it's that effective. The next thing that you're going to want to do is probably try to like put in some tech cards, if that makes sense. Like, you want to look at what the meta is doing right now, or at the time you're trying to build a deck, and think, what does well against this? So, like, back when Giggling Inventor was a used card, like an extremely popular card, probably one of the best cards in the game, people ran Mossy Horror a lot just to deal with it, and Blood Knight to get rid of the Divine Shield and pump up your own minion. That was the card that people started teching in because of that play. For Odd Paladins specifically, they started teching in the Void Ripper to flip the health if they played against a Spreading Plague. That way it would just immediately wipe the board, and then they'd be able to rebuild it with some Silverhand Recruits. And, you know, just like looking at what deck, not even like just in general what decks are popular, but what decks beat you as long as they are popular. You don't want to just tech against something like, I have a losing win rate against Rush Warrior. Who plays Rush Warrior? You know, you don't need to tech against that. Like, if you're thinking, a deck that beats me a lot is Secret Hunter, or Secret Hunter. That's a fairly popular deck. You'd be like, I'll run one of those cards that destroy secrets. That's not a great example of a tech, although I did tech that in my Odd Rogue deck and got to Legend with it because I played against a lot of Secret Hunters, and it actually helped me out quite a bit. So it's not even that bad of a tech. Point is, teching cards to try to win games is very important. Or like just putting in mind control tech, because there are a lot of aggro decks out there that get wide boards. Stealing one of them could potentially be a pretty massive swing in tempo. So you want to look at what decks you're playing against consistently and try to just tech cards around that so you have more consistent win rates. And then obviously, on top of all of this comes just playing the deck and practicing with it. And if you really want to commit to a deck, say like, I really, really want to make Odd Hunter work. Okay, I personally like Odd Hunter a lot, and if I didn't try a new deck every 2 weeks, I probably would play that deck a decent amount, and I might do that over Thanksgiving break as a stream thing, or Odd Paladin, just so you guys know, next weekend, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that entire time, probably going to be streaming. Well, not the entire time, definitely going to eat food for Thanksgiving, not important. Anyway, throughout that time, I was consistently making little tweaks to the deck to try to make it better. And by the end, I'd gotten the win rate from about 55% to about 60 to 65%, just based on little techs and practicing and finding what things I actually lose to. Because you may not think that something is a bad matchup when you're initially thinking of the deck, but sometimes just playing it out and seeing how the deck plays makes you realize sometimes things aren't as good as they could be. So, just a basic rundown, make sure your deck has enough synergy to where it runs fluidly, to where if you have something, it'll work with a decent enough things in your deck to where you can allow it to snowball out of control. But you don't want too many synergies, because if you have like a ton of like 2-card synergies, that's just not going to work. You're not reliably going to draw them. But if you have like 3 main synergies in the deck. Like, okay, I have this thing for drawing cards, this thing for pumping minions, this thing for, I don't know, pumping minions on the board rather than pumping minions in my hand. Or synergies like that. Or like Zulok has 3 synergies, the free heal to get out a Happy Ghoul, pumping minions in your hand and on the board, and just card draw. That's basically what I was getting at. So you want not too many, but like 3 synergies is probably a good maximum number of synergies, in my opinion. Around there, 2 or 3, something like that. You don't want 1, because if you have 1, you might not draw it, and ultimately your deck won't function. So you want to have like 2 or 3, ideally. For a win condition, you don't necessarily want your win condition to be like 1 card, unless you have so many reliable ways of potentially getting to that card that you're going to get it regardless. Like, for example, the win condition of Combo Priest, not the Mind Blast one, the Divine Spirit one. You have a lot of card draw with the Cleric. You usually have a Witchwood Piper to just cycle through the deck a little bit and draw a little bit more. You have the Shadow Vision. You have Acolyte of Pain. You have Powered Shield. All the things that help you draw cards, and also removal options like Spirit Lash and Psychic Scream to help stall out to get to that point. So if you want to run like a win condition that's just like 1 combo, you need to have reliable ways of getting to it, or your win condition can just be enough synergy in your deck to just gain tempo. And that's basically what aggro decks are. I basically just said aggro decks and like control decks. I just basically explained what each of them does. Then the next thing is try to tech cards to counter decks that are beating you at the time, as long as they're popular. You don't want to counter a deck that you've played like 1 or 2 times. You want to do it to one that's like high tier in the meta that also beats you because it's popular. And after that, you just want to practice the deck and make changes as you go and make it better and better as you play more matchups. The last thing that I was going to say about net decking, which I said I was going to say at the beginning, is that net decking is actually a super effective way to build a deck. Like, if you don't be afraid to do it. Some of those decks are insane. Like, a lot of the decks that I've tried, I've just net decked and then been like, okay, well, 4 of these cards I don't necessarily agree with. I'm going to tech in cards that I think will be good. And the next thing you know, it's like it's not a totally unique deck, but there are only so many deck combinations that are good that you can think of. So if you take a net deck and you just change it around a little bit, make it a little bit of your own, and change it a little bit more as you play the deck more, it's going to become more and more your deck and have its own identity. So net decking, even if you just don't change the deck and you just look at it and you're like, this is a good deck, this is something along the lines of what I would want to build, it just would have taken me a while to think of, go ahead and use it. Like, net decking is something that people shouldn't be ashamed of, but whenever I talk to people who net deck, they're like, yeah, I'm a dirty net decker, I just want to climb the ranks. There's nothing wrong with that. Just climb the ranks. It really matters about how good you are, and obviously you might not be the one to come up with the next like big deck if you never try, but net decking, there's nothing wrong with that. That being said, if you do net deck and you want to make the deck your own, just look at cards that you don't necessarily agree with and change it around a little bit. Like, I don't know. In Zulok, I thought Raid Leader would be extremely good, so I think I took out a Doubling Imp and something else to put into Raid Leaders, because if you have a wide board, obviously Raid Leader is going to be pretty good. It's why it's good in Odd Paladin. And I think I made a couple of other changes to my Zulok deck, both my budget one and my fully made one, that made it kind of like my own. And even if it, let's just say it didn't perform as well as some other decks, and I'm sure that had a mix to do with the fact that some of the people playing this are in Legend, and those are the people making the decks like consistently, and I'm just a person who gets Legend every now and then when I grind. So obviously sometimes if you make changes, the deck might not be as good as the original net deck. But the point is, you will have created your own thing. It'll still be pretty good. You'll have fun playing, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing it has its own identity because of you. So that's basically everything I have to say. If you net deck, don't be ashamed of it, and if you want to make the deck your own, change the deck up a little bit. Like, keep the base like the same, but throw in like 4 tech cards that you think will do better than 4 of the cards that are currently in the deck. So yeah, this is all just to help you all for the next expansion that's coming out real soon, actually. And I hope you all enjoy it. I know I'm going to enjoy it and probably be trying a lot of new decks, some of which will be good and some of which will be bad.